We're talking to Lauren Riley, solicitor, former contestant on the last series of The Apprentice and owner of the Link app, a tool for law firms and their clients. Hi Lauren.
Hi.
I guess I'll start in the obvious place. You were on the last series of The Apprentice. How did your skills that you developed as a lawyer help you throughout that process?
I think it was more a point of validation, because a lot of people talk about being a lawyer or in the legal profession and how those are transferable skills. I know that a lot of lawyers are headhunted to careers outside of the law, for example, but then you think, oh, I wonder what those transferable skills are, and in practice, you know, what might those mean? And The Apprentice was a perfect sounding board for that. So, for example, something like sales, the idea of selling something as a lawyer probably, didn't sit very well, but actually when you got into that scenario, you found that things like obviously negotiating on terms of contracts or, advocacy, you're picking up skills every day that you actually don't realise, and they are transferable into a myriad of different scenarios, and The Apprentice being one of them. So that was one of the best bits about it, really, about the show, was generally getting to know actually if they tick this box, that box, and even though you don't realise, you've got a lot of transferable skills.
You've used those transferable skills to make the jump into the business world, not just on The Apprentice, but in setting up your own the Link app, as I mentioned. How was the process of making the jump from practicing in a law firm to that other side of what you do?
Yeah, I mean, for me the biggest jump was actually one stage before that. So I went from being an employed solicitor to being a self-employed solicitor, so a consultant solicitor, and obviously I did that so I could remain in practice, because it's real. Obviously law is something I'm passionate about and really important to me, and I worked very hard to get there, so it's not something I want to walk away from, but obviously the business has to be, a really key focus of mine. So before I started the business, I went into this consultant role, and then obviously started the business from there. And obviously the main differences are to working conditions, so rather than being sort of shackled to my desk Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, I'm obviously out and about a lot of meetings, etc. And it's a gift and a curse. I'm really blessed to have had the opportunity to start the Link app, and I'm really passionate about where it's going to take the legal industry. But also, obviously, it means being your own boss. It's got your own pressures, and obviously there's pros and cons to both of it. But so far, so good. I'm really enjoying it, and it's been a good leap, as you called it.
Glad to hear it. We've already mentioned how transferable skills are absolutely essential, not only for making the jump to business, but for currently practicing solicitors as well when it comes to understanding the needs of their clients. So using your dual perspective as both a business person and a solicitor, what advice would you give to candidates who are currently looking for a training contract or are thinking about entering the legal profession? What tips would you give them for developing a good understanding of the commercial world?
If we depart from the commercial aspects of that question for a moment to just talk about my experience of gaining a training contract, I know that between graduating and qualifying as a solicitor or getting my training contract, I had a few years out and actually gained work experience, and I found when I sat in front of law firms to interview for the training contract process, that was just invaluable, because I had real life skills to talk about. I had done a business graduate scheme by that point as well, so I could talk commercially, as in what I could bring to the firm, not only as a lawyer but as a source of business, as a source of income, and how I would obviously client focus and etc. etc. So to reply that back to your question, for anybody looking for a training contract, I think it's really good if they've identified that commercial is where they want to be, but then it's what can you bring over and above just having your degree, just having your academics, maybe practicing on some debating or sports groups in university. That's always good, but it's the work experience I really think makes a difference, because if you can demonstrate to a law firm that you can empathise with their client on a day-to-day level, i.e. you've had some previous work experience in a commercial environment outside of law, then obviously that's a big selling point for you to be able to talk about in an interview, and then obviously further down the line when you actually get into that role, obviously you can use that in your day-to-day practice to really demonstrate the value that you're adding to a client over and above just the basic law.
Sure. And further down the line, some of our viewers might also be interested in following in your footsteps, so to speak, and making the jump to being self-employed solicitors. Have you got any advice for people about making that step?
Yeah, I mean, I think consultant solicitor roles will become more and more commonplace, I would have thought, because from obviously an employee's perspective, from liability, etc., there's clear benefits there. I've really enjoyed making that leap to a consultant solicitor. Like I say, the freedom, I get to work from my home office a lot, obviously dictating hours and fitting it around something else. I mean, obviously there are risks involved because it's effectively a 0 hours contract. Obviously, it's as and when the needs of that business, but you could obviously take on more than one role as a consultant solicitor if the firm were agreeable to that. So I found it a very positive experience because I got a lot to try and fit in around my legal practice. Obviously, I've got the business, I've got the media stuff that I do, and anybody that follows me on Twitter or Instagram will know that I'm mad keen on a lot of passions, fitness for example, and it all helps to work-life balance. I found it really good, but of course if you've got dependents or a mortgage to service, it's obviously a big consideration, but I found it beneficial.
So that's a great insight into working as a self-employed solicitor. Lauren Riley, thanks for talking to us.
You're very welcome.